her. Ma'am, step away from the male, now.
Officer, lower your voice. That's my son. He's autistic. You're escalating him.
He looks impaired. Step back or I will separate you.
I am his legal guardian. Do not touch him. This is a medical situation.
Hands where I can see them.
If you grab him, he will panic. Remember...
The dashcam footage didn't lie, but it also couldn't capture the sheer absurdity of the moment. It was a bright Tuesday afternoon, exactly 2:14 p.m., when a decorated career ended and a city's budget was about to take a nearly $1 million hit. Officer Kyle Miller, 28 years old and convinced he was the thin blue line standing between order and chaos, sat in his patrol car watching a scene unfold that he completely misunderstood. Across the lot of the sprawling Washington Park, Dr. Eleanor Vance was trying to get her son into her silver Lexus SUV. Eleanor was 54, a woman of immense dignity, the chief of neurology at St. Jude's Hospital, and a board-certified specialist who had spent 3 decades saving lives. But to Officer Miller, watching through a windshield tainted by his own biases, she wasn't a doctor. She was just a black woman struggling with a large, resistant man near a luxury vehicle. The man was Marcus Eleanor's 22-year-old son. Marcus was 6 feet 2 inches tall, broad-shouldered, and severely autistic. He was nonverbal and was currently experiencing what Eleanor knew to be a mild sensory processing delay. They had been walking in the park enjoying the sunshine, but a sudden loud noise from a nearby construction crew had caused Marcus to freeze. He planted his feet, rocked slightly, and made a low humming sound. It was his way of regulating his nervous system. Eleanor, patient and loving, had her hand gently on his arm, whispering to him, guiding him slowly toward the safety of the car's interior. She wasn't dragging him. She was grounding him. But from 50 feet away, Officer Miller didn't see a mother comforting a son. He saw a suspicious woman trying to force a disoriented man into a car against his will. Before we get into how this officer's assumption destroyed his life and cost the taxpayers $900,000, I need you to do something. Drop a comment right now. Have you ever been misjudged by someone in authority based solely on how things looked? Type yes or no below. And if you believe that police need better training on interacting with the autistic community, hit that subscribe button. This story is going to make your blood boil, but you need to hear how it ends. Miller put his cruiser in drive and rolled up behind the Lexus, blocking Eleanor in. He didn't run the plates. If he had, he would have seen the vehicle was registered to Dr. Eleanor Vance with a clean record. Instead, he stepped out, adjusting his belt, already deciding that he was interrupting a kidnapping, or perhaps a domestic dispute involving a drugged victim. He walked with that swagger, the one chest-out hand resting near his holster, convinced he was about to be a hero. Eleanor heard the boots crunching on the gravel and turned. She didn't look afraid. She looked annoyed. She was in the middle of a delicate medical intervention with her son, and she knew exactly how fragile Marcus's equilibrium was right now. "Ma'am, step away from the male subject," Miller commanded, his voice booming across the quiet parking lot. Eleanor didn't let go of Marcus. She knew that if she broke physical contact now, Marcus might panic. She kept her voice level, the same tone she used when commanding a surgical theater. "Officer, please lower your voice. This is my son. He is autistic and having a sensory episode. I need you to give us space so I can get him seated." Miller didn't hear son or autistic. He heard noncompliance. He looked at Marcus, a large grown man rocking back and forth, looking at the ground, unresponsive to the uniform. To Miller, Marcus looked intoxicated or drugged. "I said step away from the vehicle and the individual now. He looks like he's under the influence." "Are you trying to force him into this car?" "I am not forcing him," Eleanor said, turning her body slightly to shield Marcus from the officer's aggressive stance. "I am his mother and his legal guardian. He is nonverbal. You are escalating a situation that is under control. I am Dr. Eleanor Vance, and I am asking you to step back." Miller's face flushed. He was 28 with 4 years on the force, and he hated being told what to do, especially by a woman he had already categorized as a suspect. "I don't care who you say you are. I'm conducting an investigation. Step away or I will make you step away. He unsnapped the retention strap on his holster. The situation had gone from 0 to dangerous in under 60 seconds, all because one man couldn't imagine that the scene before him was innocent. Eleanor realized immediately that logic wasn't working. She needed to de-escalate this for Marcus's sake, but Miller was making it impossible. Marcus, sensing the tension, and the new aggressive stranger began to hum louder, his hands flapping slightly, a self-soothing stim. To Officer Miller's untrained and prejudiced eye, this looked like the victim was signaling for help or preparing to fight. "Sir, listen to me closely," Eleanor said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming steel. "He is not on drugs. He has autism. If you grab him, he will fight back out of fear, not aggression. You are creating a danger where there is none. I have his guardianship papers in my purse in the front seat. Let me get them." "Don't reach for anything," Miller shouted, his hand now gripping the handle of his service weapon. "Hands where I can see them. You are detaining this man against his will. I'm separating the parties." Miller moved in, reaching out to grab Marcus's arm to pull him away from Eleanor. This was the critical error. The moment Miller's hand clamped down on Marcus's bicep, the young man yelped a high-pitched sound of pure terror. He didn't understand why this stranger was touching him. He pulled back violently, his size working against him in Miller's eyes. Miller stumbled back and immediately unholstered his taser. "He's resisting, ma'am. Get on the ground. You are under arrest for kidnapping and obstruction," Miller yelled, panic creeping into his voice. He was losing control of a situation he had created. "Do not touch him," Eleanor screamed, breaking her calm for the first time. She stepped between the gun and her son, hands raised, palms open. "Do not taser him. He does not understand." Passers-by were stopping now. A woman walking her dog pulled out her phone. A contractor from the nearby site stopped his truck. The camera on the phone started recording. It captured a 54-year-old woman in a blazer and slacks, standing protectively in front of a terrified young man while a young officer pointed a taser at them, screaming commands that made no sense. "Get on the ground now!" Miller was running on adrenaline and confirmation bias. He saw a non-compliant suspect shielding a violent male. He didn't see a mother protecting a child. Eleanor slowly knelt, knowing that if she didn't, this trigger-happy officer might actually fire. "It's okay, Marcus. Mom is here. Look at Mom," she said, keeping her eyes on her son even as she knelt on the asphalt. Marcus was hyperventilating, rocking violently now, totally unmoored without his mother's touch. Miller holstered the taser and rushed forward, grabbing Eleanor's wrists and wrenching them behind her back. The handcuffs clicked a sound that cut through the afternoon air like a gunshot. "You are under arrest," Miller panted, feeling like he had just neutralized a threat. He dragged Eleanor up and pushed her toward his patrol car, leaving Marcus standing alone, confused and terrified in the parking lot. "You cannot leave him there," Eleanor shouted as she was shoved against the cruiser. "He cannot be left alone. He has the cognitive processing of a young child. You are endangering a vulnerable adult." "Backup is on the way for the victim," Miller spat back. "You just worry about your felony charges." Eleanor Vance, a woman who had shaken hands with senators and directed millions of dollars in medical research, stared at Officer Miller with a look that would later be described in court documents as chillingly calm. "Officer," she said, her voice devoid of fear, replaced by a cold fury. "You have just made the last mistake of your career. I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that I told you he was autistic. Because when you lose your badge, this is the moment you will think about." Miller ignored her, shoving her into the back of the cramped patrol car. The door slammed shut. Through the plexiglass, Eleanor watched in horror as 2 more patrol cars shrieked into the lot. Officers jumped out and surrounded Marcus. She saw them shouting at him. She saw Marcus cover his ears and scream. She saw 3 officers tackle her son to the pavement because he wouldn't comply with commands he couldn't understand. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face, not for herself, but for the trauma they were inflicting on her boy. She closed her eyes and began to memorize every detail. The time, the badge numbers, the procedure violations. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was a plaintiff, and she was preparing for war. The drive to the precinct was short, but the silence in the car was heavy. Miller was radioing ahead, pumping himself up, describing the suspect as combative and the victim as a large male requiring restraint. He was trying to build his narrative before they even arrived, a common tactic for officers who subconsciously know they've messed up. Eleanor sat in the back, her wrists aching, her mind racing. She was worried about Marcus. Where were they taking him? Was he sedated? Was he injured? Every minute he was separated from her was psychological torture for him. When they arrived at the precinct, Miller yanked Eleanor out of the car and marched her into the processing area. It was a busy Tuesday. Phones were ringing, officers were typing reports, and the smell of stale coffee hung in the air. Miller paraded her in like a trophy a kidnapper caught in the act. "What do we have here, Miller?" asked the desk sergeant, a man named O'Malley, who had been on the force for 25 years. He looked at Eleanor. He saw the tailored blazer, the expensive watch, and the way she held her head high despite the handcuffs. He frowned. Something didn't look right. "Kidnapping, obstruction, resisting arrest," Miller announced proudly. "Caught her in the park trying to force a drugged male into a vehicle. Had to separate them. Male subject was combative backup, took him to County General for eval." Eleanor spoke before Miller could continue. "I am Dr. Eleanor Vance. The male subject is my son, Marcus Vance. He is autistic. I have full legal guardianship. My identification and the guardianship court order are in my purse, which Officer Miller seized but refused to check." The room went quiet. Sergeant O'Malley looked at Miller, then back at Eleanor. He stopped typing. "You're Dr. Vance, the neurologist." "Yes," Eleanor said. "I treated the mayor's daughter for epilepsy 2 years ago. Now, Sergeant, I need you to locate my son immediately. He is at County General, likely in restraints, and he is terrified. If he is sedated without my consent, that is medical battery." Miller rolled his eyes. "She's lying, Sarge. She was aggressive. The guy didn't even know who she was. He wouldn't speak to her." "He's non-verbal, you idiot," Eleanor snapped, her patience evaporating. Sergeant O'Malley stood up slowly. He took the purse from Miller's hand. He didn't ask. He just took it. He opened it and pulled out a leather wallet. He flipped it open. The driver's license read, "Eleanor Vance, M.D." Behind it was a hospital ID badge designating her as Chief of Neurology. And folded neatly in a side pocket was a laminated copy of a legal document titled Order of Guardianship for Incapacitated Adult. O'Malley looked up at Miller. His face was pale. "Miller, did you run her plates?" "No, I saw the crime in progress. I reacted." Miller stammered, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. "You saw a black woman with a nice car and a disabled son, and you saw a crime," Eleanor corrected him. "You violated the ADA, you falsified probable cause, and you arrested a custodial parent for kidnapping her own child. I want your lieutenant, now." O'Malley didn't hesitate. He picked up the phone. "Get the lieutenant down here. Miller just arrested Dr. Vance." Minutes later, Lieutenant Henderson stormed into the booking area. Henderson was a no-nonsense commander who was trying to clean up the department's reputation. When he saw Dr. Vance in handcuffs, he looked like he might have a stroke. "Uncuff her," Henderson barked at Miller. "But Lieutenant, she was resisting. The victim is her son," Henderson yelled, his voice echoing off the cinder block walls. "Uncuff her right now." Miller fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. As the metal cuffs clicked open, Eleanor rubbed her wrists. She didn't say thank you. She looked at Henderson. "Where is my son?" "We have officers at the hospital, ma'am. They say he's distressed but safe. We can have an escort take you there immediately." "I don't want an escort," Eleanor said, her voice icy. "I want to ride to my car if it hasn't been towed.
and I want the body camera footage from this officer preserved. Do not delete a single second of it."
"We wouldn't dream of it,"
Henderson said, trying to salvage the situation.
"Dr. Vance, I am incredibly sorry. This was a grave misunderstanding. Officer Miller is young. He is dangerous." Eleanor cut him off. "He profiled me. He traumatized a disabled man. He refused to look at evidence that would have cleared this up in 10 seconds. That isn't a misunderstanding, Lieutenant. That is incompetence and bias. And I assure you my lawyer will be in touch before the sun goes down."
Eleanor walked out of the precinct with her head high, but inside she was trembling with rage. She took a cab straight to the hospital.
When she found Marcus, he was strapped to a gurney, sedated with bruises on his arms where the officers had tackled him. Seeing her son like that broke her heart, but it also steeled her resolve. She wasn't just going to sue for money. She was going to ensure Officer Miller never carried a badge again. The lawsuit was filed 3 days later. It wasn't just a local complaint, it was a federal civil rights suit. Vance v. City of Seattle and Officer Kyle Miller. The complaint alleged violations of the Fourth Amendment false arrest excessive force and egregious violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The media got hold of the story fast. The headline was everywhere: "Hero doctor arrested for kidnapping her own son." But the real smoking gun was the video. The bystander video from the parking lot was released online, and it was damning. It showed a calm, reasonable woman pleading with an aggressive, shouting officer. It showed Miller escalating, Miller grabbing Miller, ignoring the warnings. Then the body cam footage was released as part of the discovery phase. It was even worse. The audio picked up Eleanor clearly saying, "He is autistic." It picked up Miller muttering, "Looks like he's on PCP," to himself before he even approached them. It showed him sneering when she mentioned she was a doctor. The public outcry was deafening. Protests were organized outside the precinct. Disability rights advocates used the footage as a prime example of how law enforcement fails the neurodivergent community. The city attorney took one look at the case files, the video, and the credentials of the plaintiff, and told the mayor, "We cannot go to trial. We will be destroyed. The jury will give her $10 million if they see those bruises on that boy." They offered a settlement. Eleanor rejected the first 2 offers. She wasn't interested in a quick payoff. She demanded structural change. She demanded that the department implement mandatory intense training on interacting with autistic individuals led by experts, not other cops. And she demanded that Miller be fired. The union tried to fight it, claiming Miller had qualified immunity and was acting in good faith. But the internal affairs investigation fueled by the pressure of the federal lawsuit found that Miller had violated 6 different department policies, including failure to investigate discourtesy and unlawful detention. 6 months after the incident, the city caved. They agreed to a settlement of $900,000. But for Eleanor, the money was secondary. The real victory came 2 weeks later. The police chief held a press conference announcing that Officer Kyle Miller's employment had been terminated. Furthermore, the state licensing board had decertified him. He could not just move to the next town over and be a cop there. His career in law enforcement was over. Eleanor took the $900,000 check and didn't spend a dime on herself. She used it to start the Marcus Initiative, a nonprofit organization dedicated to training first responders on how to recognize and safely interact with people on the autism spectrum. In the final scene of our story, we see Eleanor and Marcus back in the park a year later. It is a beautiful autumn day. Marcus is sitting on a bench, watching the leaves fall, a small smile on his face. Eleanor sits next to him, holding his hand. The trauma of that day has left scars. Marcus is more afraid of uniforms now, more hesitant in public, but they are healing. Eleanor looks at her son, then looks directly at us, the audience. Her voiceover comes in calm and wise. "Justice isn't just about punishing the wrongdoer," she says. "It's about ensuring that the next mother, the one who doesn't have my title or my resources, doesn't have to watch her son be tackled for the crime of being different. We force them to listen." but we shouldn't have had to shout. This story is a reminder that authority without empathy is dangerous. Officer Miller saw what he expected to see, not what was there. He let his bias overwrite his training, and it cost him everything. What do you think? Was $900,000 enough for the trauma caused to Marcus? And do you think police departments in your area are trained to handle autism? Let me know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please share it. Awareness is the first step to change. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.